Jason Vance with Remembers and Carole Desmond from NARI, and we're excited to share NARI's story of going from outdated processes, some of them we're still using paper, to automated tasks. So to start, Carole, which process was the biggest time sink and how did it impact your members?
I would say we had a lot of processes that were paper related, and there was a lot of paper pushing and paper running around, and we were just wasting a lot of time because we were getting the wrong information sometimes on this paperwork. So some of that had to do with certification. It was also very frustrating. We were getting a lot of human error with payments, with not filling out the applications correctly. So we really needed to look at how we could fix this system.
And what was the moment you realized we can't keep doing this anymore?
I think we were not growing and we weren't actually the staff was getting frustrated. So how they were getting frustrated was they were getting these applications and they weren't correct, or people were selecting the wrong things, or required fields weren't getting filled out. So they were spending more time on these processes, and that's what's causing a lot of frustration. We just needed to update our technology for these processes.
So that's when you decided to transform all of your processes.
Yeah, we started to look at certification in particular, and we went to talk to a couple of different companies and consultants about how we can automate it. And there was a lot of money involved with some customized systems. So our CEO at the time said, I think we need to look at all of our technology. We really need to do a technology audit of all of our systems to see if we're going to take the right path with this. And so that really led us to a complete technology audit.
If you had to pick one automation that changed everything, what would it be?
Well, I mean, there was a lot, but I guess
you only get one.
I guess certifications just by sheer volume, and that there was a department involved in doing that. I think that was pretty critical. One of the things, though, that helped that along with our automation was that we were able to have a quick pay system installed. And that kind of blew every staff member away with having a quick pay system.
Jason, you've helped many associations eliminate repetitive tasks. Share some examples.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Carole. And so one of the trendy things that I'm seeing right now is around finance and membership, right? And it gets to really the ability to better forecast cash flow. I don't know what's going on this year. If you guys know, let me know. But nonetheless, it's how do we ultimately create some of those real-time live integrations there directly to our financial management system, right? Those integrations of exporting out batches, they're more looking for more real time, right? How do we step away from those pivot tables, right? And starting to go ahead and to engage, everyone loves them, right? But they're always out of date. And how do we go ahead and to start to identify some of those areas? So again, that becomes that huge shift in terms of chasing reports to actually really planning ahead. And then another one, which I kind of heard a little bit over here, foreshadows. Someone must have read our PowerPoint, even though we didn't turn it in on time, Carole. But ultimately, it was around events and learning, right? So staff used to spend hours. You got to export out overall from Zoom or manual attendance there that plays into a larger certification program. How do you get all that data to flow automatically there, right? And again, members are seeing their credits instantly, not having to wait 24 hours to get in their shopping cart. But ultimately, these kinds of unique workflows really start small, the little things, but they really completely change how an association really operates.
Are there any integrations that you can, or which one would you say would give the biggest wow factor to staff or members?
So on the screen, we integrated with Zoom and Forums and others, but my example is going to be with how when we integrated with Zoom, we were able to do like a one-page checkout in Remembers. And so we were capturing people, we were capturing emails and attendance, and then it would take that information and send it right to Zoom and take care of all the invitations and everything. We could then, because they were creating a record in our AMS, we could take that data and then push it back out to Informs. And all of this was like seamlessly happening without our overwatch. And that was really successful because we were getting new people put into our AMS. Then we were taking that data and starting an email drip campaign in Inform. So it became very effective, all those integrations.
So tell us about some of the early wins you saw when implementing your automations.
Okay, so because we started doing all these integrations, we were collecting a lot of information into the individual records, which we're a trade organization, and we then were collecting new members under these organizations. But it was also telling us, like, why were they interested in us? Why were they going? Were they going to the annual conference? Were they just attending a House of Delegates meeting, or were they joining new webinars we were presenting? So we could then collectively look at this information and better market to them. So now we're starting that we've got this data, we're able to do more segmenting and maybe more pinpointed marketing for different groups.
So next, we're going to talk a little bit about some change management. What would you tell another association leader about getting buy-in before you even start?
So Carole and I worked together on this project. Carole was the implementation person and I was the project manager. So there was a lot of, I raised my hand for people resistance in our staff because they were set in the ways they were doing things. And we had been with our system for, I don't know, 20 years. So it was a long time that they were used to their certain processes. So there was a lot of skepticism. I don't want to work this way. How are we supposed to do this? So it was, people didn't necessarily want to change, but they were frustrated with how they were doing things.
Yeah, and when we were working together, it was clear that you did a lot of planning in advance, and you identified kind of where that skepticism would come from so that we could work together and partner on how to overcome the skepticism to move forward.
Yeah, it was a good team effort between us because I wanted to make sure that everyone that was going to be involved, the important leaders, were part of the process to get their buy-in in the beginning and to go through all the different stages of the implementation. So they were part of the requirements gathering, and then they were part of the implementation. And that was important. And people that were more resistant, I kind of clued Carole in, and I said, I'm going to lean on you because you have to be the expert to explain this and get us through this tough transition. And you did that well.
So was there an early win that convinced everybody that yes, this was worth it?
Yeah, there was a lot of wins. I know this question keeps coming up, so I'm thinking in my head what I haven't already talked about. I'm going to go with, we had some reports put together. We had a membership report and we spent a lot of time on it. And I'm going to say like months, like going back and forth, and we would look at the details and then we would try and understand it. And my coworker was getting very frustrated. She was like, this isn't worth it. Let's just do it the old way. And I said, no, we need to stick with this. You will appreciate it when it's done. And you just press a button and you don't spend, 2 to 3 hours creating this report. So we did stick with it, and we had to really trust the numbers. We kind of had to drill down and trust those numbers and then get encouragement from Carole and her team that we could get to the end on this.
And I know it was great for me to know when we were overcoming some of that, and they were starting to see the value, because we'd have calls and we'd be reviewing the different things we've been working on, and it would be like the excitement that you'd hear was incredible.
Yeah.
So next, we're just gonna, I guess, the 5 takeaways from our, or the impact of the modernization. So how has the role of your staff changed now that you've automated? What opportunities are you seeing that you couldn't consider before?
So yeah, more time saving. So they're able not to focus on like updating the AMS, like, because we're putting some of this responsibility back into the hands of the members. So members have a simpler system to look at, and they can go in there and update things themselves. We also have our chapter executives that are able to do it a lot more without our handhold. So then our chapter liaison can work more on other things, on events or regional programs, and doesn't have to really address the hand-holding of getting a member signed up and a member paid for and so forth. Yeah, it just gives us a lot more time and freedom to do other things.
All right, so just the 5 takeaways from our presentation. 1, communication is key. Start communicating early. It's not an IT project, it's our project. Rely on vendor expertise. Carole and I work together very closely through the whole thing, and it helps overcome the challenges that she faced. Challenge what you think is necessary. Many of your legacy processes are habits, not requirements. So, maybe you don't need to keep all that paper around. Maybe it's just, a security. Start small, focus on what saves the most time or has the biggest impact to your members. Automation isn't about losing control, it's about gaining time for meaningful work. Are there any questions?
Yeah, there's actually a couple of questions. So Carole, how have your members noticed the difference in your transformation? Where does that show up for them?
I would say when they're able to access the system, that it's more user-friendly. We also, I think I talked a little bit about how we did this quick pay. It used to be a little bit more cumbersome to pay because you have to log into your account and then put your credit card information in. Well, now that we have a link, they can go right from an email to the payment option, and they don't have to log in. So, some people don't ever log in. So that kind of eliminated that step. And it also gave them opportunities for other people on their staff to make that membership payment or to sign people up for a conference, because it's all tied together. So one administrative person can go in and then sign up multiple people for events. So that was a change too we were able to do, and that saved a lot of time.
And we all saw earlier, nobody likes passwords, right? So again, deploying some of that that functionality enabled your members for a truly passwordless login, and then you can still take their money.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Great. Another one that came in was, a lot of organizations want to be more data guided. So what are some examples of some new insights that you're achieving now that you have everything under one system, one roof?
So we're about 18 months into it. So we haven't really collected as much data as we want to, but we're collecting it. We're trying to expand more of our profiles of each person and of our organization in order that we can figure out why they keep renewing or why they don't renew. And so data is behind that. One of the things that we didn't really talk about, but was kind of critical in the implementation, was that you got to make sure your data is good. And as you automate more, you can put a lot more parameters on like these applications because they're required. And our old system, we had a lot of open fields, what's our source codes? And they were not customized. And now we have much more structured source codes that you can't just type something in. So data is becoming much cleaner. And I like that because then we can use it better.
Great. Another question, a lot of us are contemplating a digital transformation or maybe even replacing our AMS or LMS or website or maybe it's all of them. But, a lot of us, I think, resonate to what you were said earlier about, hey, we have a lot of paperwork or manual processes or spreadsheets out there. So where do you recommend we begin based on your experience so far?
So I think you want to start with something small that you want to automate and really look at that process. You also have to understand one of the challenges we came across was we're used to doing it that way, and we've been used to doing it that way for a long time. And for example, we have regional memberships, and I was talking to Carole about this earlier. And a regional membership, because we're a trade organization, you could join a chapter in Milwaukee and then get a discounted rate in Madison. Well, we wanted the computer to do this work, and we didn't want to, we were manually doing it and saying, oh, since you join Milwaukee, then we'll give you the discount at Madison. Well, so Remembers came up with this complicated procedure behind the scenes that would automatically do that. What turns out was some of our rules, I guess it was a rule that, staff didn't want to change. So they didn't want to change that these had to be in sync. You had to start these regional memberships at the same time. So what I learned kind of through the process was that when you're like, as far as the transformation, your staff wants to have all this flexibility or do things differently from one person to the next. And computers don't like that. They like, on and off, on and off. And so that was always a struggle I had with implementing this, was because I would say to Carole, well, can we do it this way? It's like, well, you can do it this way, but you can't do it both ways. And that's the same thing with the regional. Like, you have to switch the rule on these regional memberships to start at the same time in order for it to work. And we discovered that kind of after the fact. After it was installed, we set it up right in Remembers, but we didn't implement it on the staff side to do it that way.
Right.
There was a question back
Yep.
here.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I was just going to say, going back to Kevin's question about how you're impacting the members, something that you're doing that you may not even realize at this point, because it may not be showing up in your data yet, is because you're populating those member profiles, you're segmenting, you're sending them more relevant messages, right? So you're probably seeing an increase in your engagement because you're improving their member experience because they're receiving things that are more relevant to them. You're seeing an increase in the engagement. You're probably seeing a decrease in opt-outs and complaints. And so overall, you are improving that member experience, and you may be seeing increases in areas that you just aren't, maybe it's not very obvious yet, but you absolutely will.
Yeah, that's good to know.
There's a question in the back.
Hi, just a quick question, not to get too in the weeds, is when you made this change and then thinking about like your marketing and how you segment, I think you kind of touched on this, like personalization. Did you change how you did like preference management or segmentation to like, these are all the things you get from us in terms of communication? Were you able to change that process at all because you made this move, or kind of leave that for a next step?
I didn't hear
Any of that?
No, I heard some of it, but like, what was the core? Did we change?
Oh, in terms of like your preference management of like, I'm subscribed to these things, tying back to personalization, thinking about that integration, Was that kind of in the landscape of things or something that's been kind of thought about?
So we do have some different like unsubscribes. I think, is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, like I get this material from
Yeah.
different mailings. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we are still gathering that data, but one other like thing that I implemented was that we can actually like tag a lot of these links in Remembers, and
Mhm.
you can probably explain it better, but it's your
The campaign.
the campaign
To track
right.
that they've taken an action on the link you've given them.
Yes. So they've taken an action on a link that we've given us. So they will actually, like, if they make a purchase, we can tell what link they made it from. And so we instituted that with these webinars by putting a special link for a direct mail piece and putting a special link for our newsletter, and then putting a link if they just got there from our website. So that has become very telling too. But I like your comment that we should kind of regroup on the whole unsubscribes to make them more specific.
Well, yeah, not to get too in the weeds, but just thinking about like that landscape. But that's awesome. That's the dream, right? The
Yeah.
segmentation of like you're following that journey. So thanks for sharing. And you guys, all right, thanks.